HQ, good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
I'm really glad to talk to you today about your PhD at the School of Health Professions Education, um, because what an achievement to finish your PhD in these crazy times. Let's start with the important stuff. How did you celebrate getting your thesis accepted?
Initially, I tried to keep it cool and just brush it off because I tried to see it as a normal, everyday occurrence. I even attended one of the She PhD meetings immediately after receiving the news, and I just put on my poker face, acting like nothing happened, and I just kept the news to myself for a while. But immediately after the She PhD meeting, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I was very happy. So I started calling my partner, my family, my friends, started calling everyone saying, hey, it's been accepted, yes. And and that's actually the most fun part of it. After that day, I had a very intimate dinner with my partner, and that was it because we are in social distancing times. So I couldn't really have a big celebration.
Keeping it cool, I would not be able to do that. I would probably just run around the room and scream like, whoa.
Every PhD student would go through this eventually. So I started to tell myself, it's not a big deal. It's not really a big deal. But I can't lie to myself for too much longer. I genuinely felt so much joy when it happened. So it is a big deal actually in the end.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm glad you celebrated that milestone then, while also sticking to the rules that are quite strict in the Netherlands at this point. Yeah. So yeah, let's talk more about that piece of art that you created. Can you give me an elevator pitch of your PhD project?
Piece of art. Wow. um, well, in my PhD, with the increased use of wearable technologies, for example, a lot of people are familiar with Fitbit, but we have maybe a more research grade technology to measure, to monitor activity. So the increased use of these wearable technologies, a lot of research has highlighted how much the students sit, or in our field, we use the term sedentary behavior to describe activities that are done while sitting down or lying down, while being awake, but spending very, very little energy. So a lot of research has shown how students spend a lot of time being sedentary, and being sedentary for prolonged periods is really bad for our health, whether physical or mental health. And the thing is, when students enter the university, they are welcomed by chairs everywhere. If a student were to stand up in class, for example, they will most likely be asked, why are you standing up? But nobody asks a student who is sitting down, why are you sitting down? So it has become the norm, the expectation for students to sit in class, to be sedentary in class. And I would ask, is being sedentary good for learning, for example? Because learning is the priority at a university, the main activity at a university. So is being sedentary, is sitting down good for our learning? If not, if it's not good for learning and it's bad for our health, why do we continue to promote this norm, this expectation to sit? So that's how I started with my research. That's how I started with my PhD. I wanted to find out whether if I replaced sitting with an activity with a slightly higher intensity, which is just standing, how does that affect the students' learning performance? So the biggest study in my PhD was that I introduced standing desks into tutorial group meetings, and I compared students who attended standing tutorial group meetings against sitting tutorial group meetings. And in the end, we did find that their overall physical activity behavior was improved. So they had less sedentary behavior. Interestingly, they had more moderate to vigorous physical activity, which means jogging, those in the stand group. Somehow there were some carryover effects to make them not just want to stand more, but also be more physically active after, which is quite interesting to see. And when we looked at their learning performance, we tried to measure learning as comprehensively as possible. So not only did we look at exam grades, we also looked at their learning as it progresses from week to week. And overall, we did not find that sitting or standing has a difference. Whether you were sitting down or whether you were standing up, your learning is more or less the same. And so, since standing in tutorial group meetings is better for someone's physical activity behavior, better for their physical health, then I would recommend for the university to provide students with the option to stand up in class. And when I say this, I do not mean to force the students to stand. I do not mean that all classes should be standing, but it should be an option to stand in class. Hopefully one day, that's my vision, that if someone decides to stand in class, it's a normal thing. People don't ask, why are you standing? That's weird, you know? Because sometimes, a lot of the times, to be honest, social pressure or just wanting to conform, to be seen as part of the group, that holds you back a lot as well. So I would recommend for this university to provide the students with the option to stand, to make it normal to stand and not make it normal to sit all the time.
Yeah, so if you're learning anyway, you might as well do it healthy, right?
If you have an option between being healthy or being unhealthy, you might as well take the healthy option.
So yeah, maybe let's talk a bit more about the main takeaway of your PhD project at Chi.
Well, it has been a very, very humbling journey, this PhD journey, because I'm constantly learning. So I came into this PhD with a psychology background, and I came in feeling very confident because I was strong in statistics. But when I first came in, I had to learn about physical activity behavior. I had to learn about activity monitoring. After learning about that, then I had to learn to process the data because it was a lot of data that comes from it. Then I had to learn about programming. So statistics itself wasn't enough. Then after learning about programming, I thought I was done. But no, I had to learn some more about other types of wearable technology. I'm actually wearing one right now, a different type. This watch measures your electrodermal activity. So this is a complete new thing that I'm learning again from scratch. So it's really, really nice to continuously be learning.
Yeah, you sound like a very curious person.
I think every PhD student is a curious person because we all start with that big question in mind, you know, that research question. Then we commit ourselves to at least 4 years of trying to find out, or maybe less than 4 years for those super exceptional ones. But we commit ourselves to trying to figure out this research question. I think that's inherent in every PhD student, to be curious.
Yeah, looking back at your journey as a PhD student, how do you reflect on it?
I think, okay, other than the constant learning, I also feel that it is a journey of resilience. For example, after spending years and years literally writing a paper, after you collect the data, you analyze the data, you write the paper, and you go through rounds and rounds of feedback from your research team, your core research team itself, and you think, okay, everything's okay, I've got the approval, I can submit this to a journal. Even with major revisions, you get so much feedback. Recently, I received some feedback that were pages long, pages after pages. The feedback itself was longer than my article. So that's something that I have to keep an open mind about. You know, I have to constantly remind myself, everyone in this, in any field, but those people who are in my field and giving me feedback on my paper, they are all super passionate in the topic. They have so much to say about the topic. So I have to keep an open mind that it's nothing personal. Everyone is just super passionate about the topic. That takes some time for me to learn about that, to be resilient, to be open-minded about the feedback that I'm receiving. And this was something that I learned from Herma Robertson. Herma was telling us that we should always build our resilience resources long before the obstacle is presented to us. and also importantly, prioritizing relationships, your partner, your friends, family, prioritizing that. So when things don't go well, you have a strong social network to fall back on. And that really, really helped me in my PhD journey, because it is a journey of resilience.
So, well, maybe talking about that, right? About that well-being and taking care of yourself. You finished your thesis well in time, right?
Yeah.
So just asking for a friend, like, what helped you?
Every PhD project is different, and every PhD journey is different. So the advice or whatever that I want to say after this may not be applicable to everyone. It's easy for me now that I've done it to say, oh, you can do this and you can do that, and surely you will arrive and do the same, finish everything within 4 years, just like me. But I couldn't have done it alone, I would say, in this PhD journey. I was very, very lucky to have had such a great research team. So I had Miriam Oude-Eggebring, Pascal van Gerwen, Hans Salverberg, and Renate de Groot from the OU. They were all very great teachers. I would call them great teachers in my life, because I learned so much from every single one of them. And they all also contributed a lot to this project and to my supervision as well. When we need to disagree with each other, we know how to disagree with each other as well. And I really, really love our group dynamics. But I mean, still, within a great team, I think every PhD student still has to exert some sort of leadership. It still has to take leadership in their project. So what you as the PhD student, or what I had to do, was adjust how I request for their cooperation. You have to take leadership a little bit in your PhD project and drive progress, make it happen, take charge, because you are most familiar with your topic. You have put the most thought, the most time into it. And if you have a good reasoning, which you usually do because you've put in time and thought into the decision, then the team should agree with you. And maybe I can give one more tip to those who are just starting out their PhD. It's not also just about the research team, but the people around you. So when I first started out my PhD, I came in with the mentality that everyone is a teacher. So everyone who's there, even though they're there just 1 year before me, they already have accumulated 1 year of experience. So I came in taking the mentality that I can learn from everyone. And I think that's really, really important, because just my colleagues who were across the desk, and whenever I was a bit lost, I had some questions, I was not hesitant to ask for help. We don't have to go through this alone. This is really, really important, at least from my perspective, that when it comes down to it, I wasn't alone in my PhD journey. I had the help of many, many people, my research team and my peers as well. And I think that was really important to help me wrap everything up within 4 years.
On the one end, it's a team effort, right? And it's really about peer support and about seeking the expertise that you have in the university. But it's also about appreciating your own expertise and appreciating the fact that you are the one putting most time in that. And allowing yourself also to take that stage when it's appropriate.
Yeah, exactly that. You've put it just right.
So last of all, you're nearing the end of your PhD. How do you plan to use the She community when you continue your work and research?
I would definitely make use of the She community as much as possible, because the She community, it's a very diverse group. One thing, it's made up of experts from all different various disciplines. Even the electrodermal activity, I could learn it from Hector, one of our postdocs at She, and I could hopefully one day also learn about eye tracking, which then I can go to Joy, who's another PhD student in our She community. There are so many experts, such a diverse field, and we all are passionate about education, and that's wonderful with the She community. One common denominator that stands out to me is that we all have a passion for optimizing education, whether health professions education or education in a general sense. Sorry for the cheesy quote, but this quote has followed me for a very, very long time. It's a quote by Nelson Mandela, where he says, education is the most powerful weapon to change the world. How you interpret it, change the world. How does education change the world? It can be changed for the better or for the worse. And I think that's where we come in to hopefully change it for the better. I'm going to hold on to the She community, be a part of it for as long as I can.
I look forward to your PhD defense very much. I put it in my calendar, March 30th at 10 a.m. That's when you're going to talk about your thesis, physical activity, behavior, and learning in higher education. So thanks again so much for this interview, for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Juliet, for inviting me, for organizing this and thinking about me. I appreciate that very much too.
We'll talk soon again, and good luck.
Thank you.